Many mental health experts say that bipolar disorder is an easily treatable disorder, but yet in preparing this video, we have talked to numerous patients who said their treatment of bipolar has not been easy. Could you comment on that?
Well, I think once a person has got the proper medication regimen down, it is easily treatable. I mean, once the medications have been balanced out, where they're on the right meds and the side effects have been managed, you can easily treat it and people do well. I think a lot of these people that we spoke to were referring to that initial period where they first were diagnosed, put on medications, maybe the dosages were wrong, they had severe side effects, maybe the medication didn't work and they were switched to another one, or medications were combined, and that is not easy, the titration of the medications and the treatment regimen. But once that is balanced out and the patient is on a regimen that works for him or her, generally speaking, that lasts, and then it is easily treatable. But it's something that varies with each patient.
Do we know what triggers the first episode of bipolar disorder?
It's often felt that stress or a stressful life event.
How prevalent or widespread is bipolar disorder?
The literature suggests that bipolar disorder affects in the United States between 0.5 and 1.5% of the population. I actually think it's a little higher for all the patients we see, for example, in psychiatric emergency. Some references say it might be as high as 2%.
At what age is it likely to first strike an individual?
The textbooks pretty much say that bipolar disorder affects people between the ages of 25 and 40. I'm seeing more and more people in the psychiatric emergency room with episodes of mania at a much younger age.
Is there any evidence that this perhaps runs in families?
Absolutely. I went to school up in Cleveland, and there's an Amish community nearby. I believe it's called Millersburg. And we know that the Amish intermarry, and we would have a lot of Amish people coming into the psychiatric hospital up in Cleveland that's affiliated with Case Western. It was just because of the inbreeding, you know, a second cousin marries a third cousin, that sort of thing.
Let's go through each type of bipolar disorder, and if you would, define and explain each type. First would be bipolar disorder type 1.
Bipolar disorder type 1 is probably the most prevalent of them all. And this is where the individual has manic episodes, and then also what they term mixed episodes. And mixed episodes.
And what would the difference be for type 2?
Type 2 is a form of bipolar where there's a depressed phase and then some hypomania. So you would see a lot of depression, and then the person, instead of cycling into a full-blown manic state, they would cycle into like a hypomanic state, which is usually right before or after the depressed phase.
What is a rapid cycler?
A rapid cycler, according to the DSM-4, is a person who has at least four major episodes of either mania or depression, cycling back and forth within 1 year. But of course, there are rapid cyclers who have many more episodes than that. You know, there's people who might every other day be changing, but to be diagnosed.
Could you explain what is happening biologically in the brain in both the manic and the depressed phases of this disorder?
Certainly. In the manic phase, I think we'll have some graphics that are going to be coming up here, but the brain is made up of neurons, and these neurons, there's little teeny gaps in between called synapses. And these synapses are filled with neurotransmitters. The ones involved with bipolar and depression are norepinephrine and serotonin. We know that in a manic phase, the synapses got too much norepinephrine and serotonin. Just like when a person is using cocaine, the synapses fill with neurotransmitter, and they have all this energy. It's like putting too much electricity into a light bulb. There's more energy there, and it's the machine, the light bulb, or the person in the case of the disorder, is going to be more speeded. So in the manic phase, there's too much of this. Conversely, in the depressed phase, in the synapse, there's going to be too little. It's just like a light bulb. If you don't give it enough electricity, it's going to be dim. It's thought that the classical form of bipolar, when we used to just think it was like a one-for-one trade, and by the way, there are some people with bipolar who never really get depressed. They just mainly stay in the manic phase. It used to be thought that, you know, it was a one-for-one trade, but it would be thought that the synapse would flood with neurotransmitter, the body would use that up. People who are in the manic phase typically feel on top of the world. They're positive thinkers, life is great. They can be very impulsive and irritable while in the elevated state, but generally speaking, you know, they feel pretty good about themselves.
How about ideas of grandeur?
Ideas of grandeur, typically people who are in the manic state, and that's one of the cardinal signs of mania, they have a very inflated self-worth. I can honestly tell you I've met the Emperor of France 3 or 4 times, the director of the CIA many times, Jesus Christ or Jesus Christ Jr. numerous times. People believe there's somebody beyond who they really are.
Does lithium work on every patient who has bipolar disorder?
Not every patient. Most patients do respond to lithium, but the question is, do they tolerate the lithium? And a little bit later we'll get into the side effects. Some people have to get off of it because of the side effect profile can be pretty drastic in certain individuals.
What is meant by the 70-70 rule of lithium?
Lithium, it is believed, will reduce, for people who tolerate it well and respond to it well, the frequency of their mood swing by 70%, let's say the manic phase. It'll make it less, 70% less drastic. So on a scale of 1 to 10, if it had been a 10, it'll now be a 3 in terms of how significant or bad it is. And then the frequency, instead of having, let's say, just as a hypothetical, 10 episodes over a 2-year period, the individual might only have 3. So it reduces the intensity by 70% and the frequency of the manic phase, the mood fluctuation, it reduces the frequency by 70%. So that's why we get the 70-70 rule.